Aha, recording in progress. All right, all right. Cool. Is my screen showing all right?
Yes.
Yep.
Sounds good. All right. So I want to present our latest survey results to you guys. So we did a follow-up survey to figure out researchers' willingness to pay for fast and accurate peer review activities. And we basically did that in two different settings. So in the questionnaire, we first asked them about a setting where they're literally just submitting something to DeSci publish, so there is no journal associated with it, and they would pay for review, for fast, accurate review of their paper on DeSci publish. So that's the first scenario. The second one is we're assuming that the journal that they want to submit to is already hosted on DeSci Publish. So the question here is if there is slightly different willingness to pay in that scenario, or if that matters at all. Then the third thing that we wanted to figure out is whether people have a willingness to pay for a fair data availability badge. So this idea came up a couple of weeks ago when we had this workshop together with the Go Fair Foundation, where it turns out that there is already like several software protocols that we could use to evaluate the fairness of the metadata of the research that people have posted, of the data that they shared on DeSci Publish. And persistent identifiers, of course, they're always included for free. So our fair data availability badge would basically be a combination of like sharing your data on the Codex network and running an evaluator on the quality of its metadata. So is there a willingness to pay for that? And then a bunch of interesting comments from the survey participants that I wanted to share with you. And then we'll try to translate that into potential pricing plans, what this could mean for us as a business. And then finally, I wanted to show you briefly our latest user growth and our user acquisition funnel. So that's the plan. I have a lot of content here for you guys, so please feel free to interrupt me at any moment. Don't hesitate if you have any questions or whatever. I'm happy to stop. So the survey was run last week from the 28th of March until the 2nd of April. So we had 308 actively publishing scientists who answered the survey. On average, they needed about 7 minutes to complete the survey, and we paid them £5 for doing that, which actually translates into an hourly wage of £48, which is pretty good even for faculty members at universities. As we've seen with earlier surveys, the vast majority of our survey respondents are younger than 40, and about half of them have some experience doing peer review for journals. And again, we have a broad mixture of people from different scientific disciplines. Most people, the most frequently named category was actually the natural sciences, followed by the social sciences and the medical sciences. And if you look at the job titles of the people that filled out the questionnaire, 35% of them were PhD students, 24% of them are researchers working outside of academia, 19% postdocs, and the rest were faculty members and others. Okay, so at the beginning, I showed people a welcome screen with a little text that was supposed to set the stage. So I said, at DeSci Labs, we're on a mission to transform scientific publishing, making research more accessible, reliable, and rewarding for everyone involved. Sharing and accessing research on DeSci Publish will always be free of charge. Instead, we aim to explore the feasibility of a novel business model for scientific publishing, one that compensates referees for providing rapid, high-quality reviews. By participating in the survey, you will help us determine if this idea is feasible in practice. Okay. So then the preprint reviews had another intro text that read as follows. So imagine a publishing system where expert reviewers are paid for delivering high-quality feedback within just 2 weeks. This service does not host journals itself. Instead, it helps you improve your manuscript before submission. and you can optionally include the review and your responses when submitting to the journal of your choice. Key features include: reviewers are domain experts with no conflicts of interest. Each reviewer has published on a closely related topic in a peer-reviewed journal. All reviewers receive the same fixed payment per review, and an editor evaluates each review's quality before approving payment. And then I said, assume your employer does not cover the cost. And the next 4 questions aim to help us determine a fair and responsible and reasonable price for one review. Okay, so a little bit of context on this prelude. So what I'm describing here, obviously, is the capability of our referee finder that Ogban and Jurismeta are working on. And I think it was also important to just clarify that the employer does not cover the cost, because in the last survey, we saw in the comments from our respondents that some of them were a little bit confused. They were like, I'm not really sure how I should answer your questions. Should I assume that my employer is paying for this or not? And obviously the answer for how much they're willing to pay would be different in these 2 cases. So now we're making it very clear. And then we're asking for each product, we're actually asking 4 different questions about the price. And this method that I'm using here is called the Van Westendorp survey method. And it basically, I will show you in a second what this looks like. But the reason why we're not just asking 1 question is because we know from a large literature and marketing research that if you just ask people directly how much they're willing to pay for a product or for a service, you're not getting very reasonable answers. The answers that you're getting, they're much more reflecting social desirability biases or whatever comes to people's mind. So very often what you get is like this talk is cheap effect, where people just say anything, but they're actually not really reporting their true willingness to pay because they don't have a good reason for it, and it's mentally exhausting to actually think about it. So the Van Westendorp survey design gets around this by asking 4 very specific questions. The first one here is, at what price in US dollars would a single fast peer review delivered in under 2 weeks be so cheap that you'd question its quality? So that's the absolute lower bound for what is a reasonable price for a product or service. The second one is asking about, at what price would you consider it a great value bargain? The third one is then tapping into the expensive category, where we're asking at what price in USD would make a single fast peer review feel expensive, but still worth considering. And then the final one is about determining the upper bound. And we're asking at what price in US dollar would a single fast peer review become too expensive for you to consider using the service. So, and then basically what we can do is we can plot the answers that people gave to these 4 questions in a graph like this. So let me explain briefly how this works. So the blue line is the too cheap question. So this is basically telling us at what price people would say that the service is so cheap that they would question its quality. And the way to read this is that on the x-axis, you have the willingness to pay that people stated in their response. And on the x-axis, you have the number of people that actually say that at price X, so and so many people, so that percentage of the survey population thinks that the survey is too cheap. So for example, at a price of $1, basically 100% of people would say it's too cheap. We would doubt the quality of the survey if it's only $1. But if it costs $100, then it's only like 30% of people that would doubt the quality of the service at that price. The green line is telling us what people think is acceptably cheap. The yellow one is acceptably expensive, and the red one is the upper bound. At what price would people not even consider this product anymore? And now the optimal price in this method is being determined by the intersection of the blue line, so too cheap, and the red line, too expensive. So we see here that the two of them, they actually intersect exactly at a price of $99. So we can actually put a little bit of a range around this. So there is what we call the point of marginal cheapness, which is the intersection of the blue line, so too cheap, and the yellow line, acceptably expensive. So this is this marker here. And the point of marginal cheapness is $80. And the point of marginal expensiveness, this is the intersection of the acceptably cheap line, so the green line, and the red line. So, and here they intersect at a price of $151. So, what we learned from this is that, at least according to the survey, people have a willingness to pay of about $100, even if the research that they're getting reviewed on DeSci Publish isn't already in a journal. So if they haven't submitted to a journal, they're just submitting it to us and they're getting a review. So I think that's actually quite interesting. Now, next scenario. So journals on DeSci Publish. So now imagine the system hosts a Diamond Open Access journal you want to submit to, no publication fees, no paywalls. The journal offers two peer review options. The first one is traditional review, where you have unpaid referees and uncertain response times. And the second one is express review, where we're paying the referees to deliver high quality feedback within 2 weeks. And now we're assuming that the express option is the journal's only source of revenue, but your choice of review type does not influence the acceptance decision. And then furthermore, we're assuming that only one review is required for the editor to make a decision. So a decision here means either accept or reject. And then again, all reviews follow the same standards that we discussed earlier. And again, we're assuming that the employer does not cover the costs. Okay. Now, the questions are basically the same that we had before, just slightly rephrased. So we're now asking about at what price in US dollars would a single fast peer review at this journal be so cheap that you'd question its quality, and so on and so forth. So the second question, again, great value bargain. Third one, feels expensive, but still worth considering. And the last one, too expensive. And now here's the graph. So for the journal, we actually have pretty much exactly the same optimal price. So the optimal price is $100 compared to $99 before. And the point of marginal cheapness has moved up a bit at the point of marginal expensiveness as well.
You muted.
Oh, interesting. Can you hear me again?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So basically the lower and the upper margin of what people are willing to pay has shifted up a little bit. So we now have a willingness to pay that is sort of optimal between $100 and $200 if it's actually a journal that you're submitting to. So then I had a number of follow-up questions. So I wanted to know how many people are actually comfortable with a journal policy that allows only one round of revisions before a final decision is made. So decision again, acceptance or rejectance. The reason I'm asking this is because I know from experience that in a lot of cases, the reviewers actually, so every time that you send back your revised manuscript, the editor typically sends it out back to the referees until the editor has decided that it's ready to publish. And very often it takes 2, 3, maybe even 4 rounds of review. And every round of review costs you as an author several months of work and waiting until you hear back. So this is actually, these multiple rounds of review are actually really painful for the author. But on the other hand, they also mean more chances to improve your manuscript. And also typically, like with every round that you're getting basically sent out back to the reviewers, your chance of finally getting acceptance increases a little bit. So it's an open question to me if people would actually like a policy where it's like only one round of review and then the editor makes a decision, or if people want to have this traditional system where it's up to the editor to decide like how many rounds they want to review and revise the paper. Now,
a question on this.
Yes, please.
I have this like gut feeling that this could probably differ like a lot between research fields. Do we have results on that?
That's a great remark. So I will look into that. So we can definitely look at these results by the research fields that people mentioned to us, but I haven't done that yet. That's a great remark. Thanks, Edward.
Cool. Okay. It would be nice to know.
Yeah. So about 1/3 of people said yes, they would actually like such a journal policy. A third said no, they rather prefer the traditional system where they can have as many rounds as the editor wishes. And a third said, they're undecided. So I would interpret this result as saying that we should probably make it optional for journals to have a one-round review policy. So we already know that the Inside Journal actually prefers to have multiple rounds of revisions where the referees are playing an active role in shaping the outcome of the paper and the final result of the paper. And that's totally fine. I think we should support that. And for journals that just want to be quick and basically save the author's time, I think we can make it optional for them to offer a one-round review policy. So that would obviously also make it easier for us in terms of paying for the review services. So if there is several rounds of reviews, then the question is obviously like, should we pay the authors again for the second and third round, or is this covered by the one-time fee that they received? So this is some fine-tuning that we need to do there in terms of product development. The next follow-up question was, as an author, would you prefer that the reviews you receive for your submission are openly available to the public or only visible to you and the editor? So context here, we're obviously building a system where by default we can make everything open. But I know from interactions with journals and talking to colleagues that a lot of people seem to be concerned about having a public review for their work that is negative, which they cannot make go away, right? So it's a little bit like it's a prestige thing. And also sometimes you get a review that you're just really upset about, where you just really do not agree with the referee, and the referee criticized you for something that they misunderstood or whatever. So the result is that only 16% of people say that they want open reviews. 42% say that they prefer if it's only visible to them and to the editor. And another 42% say that they want to choose. So I think this is quite interesting. So this is a point where I think user preferences are clearly not aligned with best open science practices. So ideally, of course, we would want to make everything openly available. But if like 80% of people do not want everything to be open, or at least they want to have a choice in whether they want to whether it's going to be open or not, I think we actually have to give them that choice, because we still want them to use our platform. So I think here the learning for us is that we should make the reviews public as an option that we give to the author. So the default should be yes, but they can change it to private. This, however, will definitely need to lead to a bias in the reviews that are publicly available. So there is a bunch of empirical research based on journals that have a policy where the authors can actually decide if they want to make the reviews publicly available upon publication. And also where the referees have a choice to say, yes, I'm okay with making my review publicly available or not. And what the literature is telling us is that the open reviews in these journals, they're much more positive towards the work that was being evaluated than the closed ones. So if we only, if we give people the choice to say, make it open or not, we will definitely have open reviews that are much more positive on average. So the tendency is going to be that people will hide the negative reviews. Yeah, so the alternative, of course, would be that we say, yes, we make it always open, but that may actually cost us users. So I'm wondering how you guys are thinking about this. So do you have any sort of like immediate reaction to this?
Again, sort of curious how, like, I'm not surprised, but sort of curious also, like how this differs both of like over age, but also fields.
Yep, exactly. So I'll look into that. Thanks, Edward. Good.
I I think we should give the user the ability to hide it, and having like all reviews kind of positive is reasonable a little bit because everybody is trying to show the best of his work and how his work is good.
Yeah.
So I do not see a problem with it. But on the other side, if we force it to be all public, that's against around 80, I think, percent of users' intention.
Yeah.
It will not cause us some users. It's gonna cause us like most of the users.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna be a huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm afraid of. Yeah. So yeah, I think probably the most reasonable thing that we can do at the beginning is make it optional for the author whether they want to make the review publicly visible or not. The default should be yes, but if the author is like shy or unhappy about the review, I think it's reasonable if they hide it. Yeah.
I'm just wondering here as well if the point of intervention is better to be at the journal level, because I think I am like thinking of like, all right, if we're trying to shift things towards more open, which is actually a question we need to ask, and then it feels like for example, eLife making all reviews option like open is the person can opt in like, hey, I want to go into this journal, and as a result it will be open, versus having it at the intervention level, at the level of the author, which is just like a personal choice. And so then it doesn't have any like, okay, there are spaces for open, there are spaces for closed. I'm wondering what people think of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know we've voiced this before, but it could be like a paid feature for the journal to have the option to have a private review space thing, something that we could provide on like the web service level.
Yeah. So
I think it's totally fine that the platform allows for private reviews, because ultimately, like, the consequence of that is borne by the communities who are operating their journal, right?
yes, exactly. Yep. Okay. All right. So then let's move on. So as a next question, I asked the survey participants, as a referee, how would you prefer to get paid for your work? And the options were in tokens, in US dollars, in euros, or some other currency. And this is pretty obvious here. Only 1% of people want to be paid in tokens. The vast majority wants to be paid in fiat. So I'm not surprised by that.
What was the question?
The question is, as a referee, how would you prefer to get paid for your work?
And these were the options.
Yes, these are the four.
So I would have potentially. So the thing I'm worried about here is that when they see tokens, they just don't understand what it is.
Yep.
So like, what if you said tokens that are readily exchangeable for any currency, like US dollar?
Yep.
With the easily, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, you're totally right. So we know actually from our January survey that 88% of the survey respondents back then, that they prefer token payments to no payments whatsoever. So I think it's probably going to be okay if we pay people in token, as long as we fix the amount of tokens that they're getting to a fiat currency, so that we're basically carrying the exchange rate risk at the point of payment, but then we leave it up to them if they want to cash out or just hold on to the tokens. So this is how I'm currently thinking about it. Okay, and in terms of user experience, next question was, as a user of a scientific publication solution that pays referees, which user experience would you prefer? Either no mention of tokens at all, everything totally vanilla with subscriptions and fiat payments, or earn, spend, and stake tokens directly, or 3, a mixture of both, letting you choose on demand. And again, the majority of people actually do not want to be forced into a token system only. At least they want to have the option to choose on demand, or they want to have like a totally plain vanilla experience. So not surprising, but it's good to know like what people's preferences are. Okay, so in summary, what I think we can take away from this survey is that the optimal price for one preprint review is somewhere between $80 and $150, which could be marketed by us as saying this costs $150, but we give you a $50 temporary discount. So that could work. Optimal price for one journal review is between 100 and 200. We could market it as 200, again with a $50 discount. Then I think instead of talking about tokens, it is probably better if we use a more neutral term, maybe something like open science credit instead of tokens in the app and the website. So I'd actually love to get your opinions and your suggestions on this. So how should we actually talk about the tokens in the app and on the website? And then, yeah, so public peer review looks like that this needs to be optional and controlled by the authors. Again, journals with only one review round should probably be optional. And then there is a question, an open question, is whether there is a premium willingness to pay for reviews from famous scientists. So people that are very senior, very well known in your field, would you have a higher willingness to pay to basically get their eyes on your work? So this is something that we can test in the future. But there is other pricing models, for example, from American Journal experts that offer language editing services where, yeah, it's pretty clear that people have a premium willingness to pay for either faster turnaround or for an additional pair of eyes from a senior editor. So I expect that here people would probably have a premium willingness to pay if we can get them a really famous scientist from their field to review their work. But again, open for future research. Do you guys have any comments or suggestions or immediate like ideas about this?
Go
ahead, Sina.
I think in terms of like if we really have people who have a strong preference for having everything denominated in their local currency and not to hold the token for more than just like a instantaneous moment, maybe they can have that option, but we just charge them like a 15% fee to immediately buy and sell their token. You know,
we've discussed this a little bit in like both in connection to the like, protocol design, but also with the token ruling. And there is like a little pitfall here if we sort of end up being like a bank holding their tokens for them. But it's probably easier for us to just, provide the service of doing the token transactional parts and just having like a traditional SaaS payment thing going on. So they would just get paid by us in fiat, and we would sort of arbitrage on that by taking the token rewards to ourselves. We can sort of like play with the haircut we do in between. So basically the end user would never even receive any tokens because we would have an agreement with them that we would just pay them for the review. We sort of set that up as a direct like B2C type subscription instead.
Something like that could be interesting, and we could basically use that revenue or whatever, we could use it to actually buy the token.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
And I don't want to like derail into this, but me and Philip have been discussing this like the other direction as well. So like for providing evaluations, you can have the same sort of agreement, given that you might not want to interact directly with the chain and stuff. So basically, we do the same, like provide the reviews through us. We have like a retainer or like an escrow from them, and we put up the tokens as collateral. If we get slashed, we slash them through like regular contracts.
Yep.
And if they don't even have the hardware to like run the evaluators on, we can do that under like traditional SLA type agreement and like just earn money at every turn in this thing.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Okay. All right. So then moving on to the last part of the survey, the fair data availability badges. So here the framing was as follows. So the next section of the survey examines your willingness to pay for a fair data availability badge, which you could purchase to make your research data publicly accessible. The fair data availability badge certifies that your research data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. By purchasing this badge, you receive 1 gigabyte of storage with 10 years of guaranteed availability secured by 2 independent storage providers, a DOI for your dataset ensuring proper citation and long-term accessibility, and authorship credit on your OrgID profile, allowing funding agencies and employers to track your open data contributions. This badge enhances your research visibility, supports open science, and demonstrates compliance with fair principles to funders and institutions. So this question was only asked to people who said that they occasionally or frequently do empirical research. So they have to do something with data, otherwise this badge doesn't make sense for them anyway. So again, the same 4 questions: too cheap, great value bargain, feels expensive, too expensive. Now here are the results. So the optimal price point for this thing is $74. And the price range that comes out is between 51 and 101. So honestly, when I saw these results, I was shocked how high the willingness to pay is. And look actually at the long tail of the distribution here. So there's some people that say that even for $500 or for $750, such a badge would not be too expensive for them. So I was really, really surprised when I saw that. So I actually thought that it would be like a tenth of that. Another thing is, like, in the description of the badge, I said that only 1 gigabyte of storage is included, which is fine for survey purposes. But of course, our DeSci Publish offers 100 gigabytes for free. So what we could definitely do is, like, we could just include 100 gigabytes per badge as a default, and then charge for any additional capacity. And the optimal price range here, like somewhere between $50 and $100. So I'd say this is worth building, guys. Any feedback or reactions to this?
Worth pointing out that 100 gigs storage for free for all users is like not sustainable long term. I'm not sure what the like storage costs are on like Filecoin right now, but there is definitely a like very large headroom for us to, like, if this is the willingness to pay, we can do it like a fair bit cheaper, like a lot cheaper, and still take a sizable haircut to fund those operations.
For sure. And just to be clear here, so we actually know this from the Dropbox pricing model. So in Dropbox, you also pay basically every plan has a certain maximum storage that you're paying for. And the more you pay, the more storage you're getting. And we know from them that the vast majority of users that sign up for a particular plan, they basically store only a small fraction of what they are allowed to store, right? So it's like it's a highly skewed distribution where the vast majority of people, they're paying for a plan where they could maybe store 100 gigabytes, when in fact they only store 1 or 2 gigabytes. And if you run the numbers on Dropbox, it turns out that they're calculating in a way that basically if everybody would be maxing out their storage maximum, they would make a massive loss. Instead, they're highly, highly profitable, primarily because of this. Right? Well, yeah. Okay, and now a couple of really, really interesting comments from the users. So the first one is from a PhD student in the UK. So she says, I've been closely following DeSci Labs for a while. I would love to know the latest developments. I think that tokenization and digital currencies are the future. Being able to hold tokens, stake, invest, and help research become more accessible are great ideas. It would be great for people to be able to invest and to help scientific research directly. There's currently a big gap in science behind paywalls, and most people cannot directly invest into research, but DeSci Labs might be able to provide that in the future. I wholeheartedly agree. We're not going to do that this year, but this is definitely something that I think we can do with our token in the future. It would probably be the DeSci Foundation that would offer funding mechanisms for legal.
I think we can even do crowdfunding experiments.
Exactly. Totally.
We have the Stripe thing, we just need to dress it up a bit.
Yep. Totally.
I don't think it necessarily makes sense to fund at this point with not that many users, like individual papers, like the replications, but it could make sense to like fund a topic, like
exactly.
Receive RFPs for that topic.
Yep. Totally agree. So that was nice. A second comment from a researcher working outside of academia, under 30 years from Canada. I'm worried about the use of AI in a service like this. How would the company ensure against AI-assisted peer reviews? It could be an easy way for some users to exploit the service. Also, would reviewers be able to catch or tell if a submission was written by AI? I would be wary of using any such service if there are no AI safeguards in place. I think so.
Look at the whole publishing industry, buddy.
Sorry, what's that?
Well, this guy is probably not aware of the entire publishing industry, that it's flooded by AI, right?
Well, I mean, he's basically saying, I think he is aware of it. It's just that he says he wants us to put AI safeguards in place, which I think is actually very, very reasonable. Next one, from a postdoc in Canada. Very good survey. These are very relevant questions in a time where the peer review system has many flaws with long wait times. I'd happily pay for a faster peer review, as the survey suggested. I wish this was a real option. So I honestly, I got so excited when I read that comment. So thank you, postdoc from Canada. Next one is also from the UK, researcher working outside of academia. Something to consider when paying reviewers: is there a stringent guideline available for the reviewers to follow, rather than, say, a reviewer only doing it for the money? There should also be a justification on why that said reviewer is the best person to review a manuscript if only one reviewer decision is enough to publish. Again, something that I strongly agree with, and something that we can actually deliver with our AI referee finder that will tell everybody, at least in broad strokes, why that person who wrote the review was suggested, what their qualifications are, yeah, exactly. So we can definitely say that, and we can offer a template for the referees to fill out, so a so-called structured peer review, where we ask them very specifically to provide us feedback on very specific questions about the manuscript. Okay, next comment from tenured faculty in the UK. I would not pay for peer review from my own money as it's part of my job. As the questions were framed, there really is no amount I would pay. Interesting. Another one, PhD student from the UK, says, I would probably only consider these options if I had funding to use them. Right? So I think the tenured faculty member would maybe change his mind if they could actually get money for doing reviews themselves, but who knows? I think there's a good chance that there's going to be a sizable chunk of the academic community that is just not going to be open to such a radical change in the system from the beginning. But I think that's totally fine. There is enough and strong enough support, especially from junior researchers, for the idea. Next comment, also from a PhD student in the UK. While speed is the main interest for people just wanting to weekly CV build and get stuff out, or just for quickly dissemination for impact, one of the common comments from colleagues is how much better their work becomes after several rounds of review and revision in top journals, even though painful at the time. I think losing this for quick payment and publish risks, sounding like predatory journal, as well as risk of being detrimental to the scientific process in the long run. So please be careful to not lose the ethics and learning. So I think like here, what I see is shining through is a skepticism towards this idea of paying people for something that they normally do for free. And also the skepticism towards just having one round of review, which is why I think that we need to make it optional for journals to basically just decide on their own review and publishing policy. Postdoc from Italy says, I wonder who would be willing and available to do a peer review in 2 weeks. So again, interesting comment. I think we will have to try it out, but my sense is that if we actually pay referees a reasonable amount of money, like $150 or so, and we make it clear that we're only paying them if they can do it within 2 weeks, I would suspect that the vast majority of people that agree to do this will actually deliver on time. PhD student from France says, it would be nice to know the percentage of review price that will go directly into the reviewers' pockets. I would prefer a system that will provide the reviewers with the maximum money from the referee fees. Totally agree. Then there were a number of comments that point to misunderstandings. So someone said, I have concerns about early career researchers being left behind by additional review systems like this. I'm not really sure what this person means, but from my point of view, the system would dramatically improve the chances of early career researchers in 2 ways. First of all, it would decrease the waiting times that they have for reviews, so they can actually improve their work and get it published much faster. And second, they can actually get paid for doing that type of work. So I'm not really sure where this worry is coming from. PhD student from Ireland says, I think this encourages the predatory nature of journals. Reviewers should be paid, but by the journal, not the researcher, especially when already paying to publish or for open access. But I do think this would still be successful. So I think this person just missed the context where we clearly said that there are no publishing fees and there are no paywalls. But okay. Then tenure faculty from the Czech Republic says, not clear why should authors pay for the reviews and then likely for access to articles as well. The publisher service provider should either pay for the reviews or make all the content open access without fees for the authors. So again, I think that's a misunderstanding. And then finally, somebody from Canada says, there's a discomfort knowing you are paying for the peer review, almost like you're buying the decision. I think here the misunderstanding is that you're not paying for getting a good review, you're paying for getting a review. Just like you're paying to get your car inspected every now and then if it's still roadworthy. You have to pay if the car is passing the test or not. It doesn't matter. And then
time explaining that with that exact metaphor, I think.
Sorry?
It would be nice if we had some videos that like explained it with that exact metaphor.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree. Totally agree. Yep. And then a bunch of people actually didn't understand what fair means or what the implications are. So there is a lot of people that said that they wouldn't pay for a badge like this because they can store the data with their university. But just because they can store the data doesn't mean that the data has a persistent identifier or that it has metadata that makes it findable and accessible. So all of these things, I think they will require quite a lot of like intelligent communication with the user to make clear what the benefit.
They'll eventually be mandated, so that'll solve that.
Yeah. I mean, for some funding agencies, it is already mandated, but the funny thing is, of course, that they have no idea how to check whether their fundees actually.
Once we have something that works, that is something you can just buy, they're going to be like, yeah, like you have to buy this to like publish with us.
Exactly. Yep.
But to
Yeah. Yeah. And then there was a number of people that had really nice comments for us. So somebody from South Africa said, I enjoyed the study so much. Another postdoc from the US said, this is a very interesting and important topic. A postdoc from the UK said, interesting study. I'd be interested to know how the opinions on rates compare to the actual rates paid for services, which edit manuscripts for English quality prior to peer review. Another postdoc said, interesting study. I'd be interested to know how the opinions, no, that's actually, yeah, that's the same comment actually. Oh, sorry. And then somebody else said, interesting model for publishing, looking forward to the results. Okay, very cool. So my learnings from this is that we need to have an AI detection for the articles that are getting uploaded or submitted, but also for the reviews that we're receiving. I don't think that there is anything wrong per se with using AI to either improve the quality of your writing or to assist you with the review. But there needs to be a transparency around like how much has actually been human produced, how much has been AI produced, and so on and so forth. Reviews need to be structured so we can produce a template with very clear questions and a Likert scale answer and comments for each question. We should show authors why certain referees were selected and what qualifications they have. And then referees should have the option to sign their review to reveal their name and affiliation. And then again, like there is this big need for clear communication. For example, what does fair mean? How much do referees earn? And payments to referees, it also needs to be clear that they do not depend on whether their reviews are critical or supportive. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Philip.
All right.
Thanks, Philip.
All right, take care, everyone.
Philip.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.